This video is supported in part by Retro Days, a place for nostalgia nerds to gather, share memories, chat, and engage. Go to retrodays.com or check their YouTube channel linked below. It's time to talk about Contra. But before we do, we've got to deal with an elephant in the room. It's this My Arcade version of Space Invaders that came out just a little while ago. Now, ever since this thing was released, it has raised the bar for what we've come to expect from tabletop arcade machines. Now, you might say it's not fair to judge everything else I review by this unit, and I actually don't. I try to temper my expectations based on price and release date and manufacturer and what the unit delivers, but you'll remember when we opened this Space Invaders unit, there was a flyer inside, and that flyer listed 3 items in the Premium Edition line from My Arcade. It was this Space Invaders, the Street Fighter II, and this Contra unit that I hold in my hand. So you probably will hear me reference that Space Invaders several times throughout the course of this video, and I would argue that in this case, that comparison is entirely justified. There's an equivalence established by My Arcade themselves that put this in the same league as that amazing quality box that we looked at not long ago here on the channel. What I want to know is if this second entry in the Premium Edition line measures up to that strong start that they had, and if you're watching this video, odds are you would like to know that too. Let's find out together right now. Don't you know that you're a grown up? No games, no puns. Not a lot if you're a grown up. Hey there, welcome back to GenXGrownUp. I'm John, I am a GenXGrownUp. Thank you for checking out this video and the rest of the channel. So let's get cooking right away with Contra. This is a classic arcade game released by Konami in 1987. Man, when Contra hit the arcades, it was an amazing leap. Now, not only was the quality of the game great, and it was inspired by what was happening in action games on home consoles at the time, but it was also one of the first and best examples of cooperative multiplayer in an arcade game. In Contra, you guide Bill and Lance through the jungles and bases to defeat the Red Falcon organization before they can wipe out all of humanity. Do these evil organizations ever consider that they're part of humanity? I don't think they do. Anyway, the environments, action, and protagonists of Contra were heavily inspired by the 80s action heroes that were gracing the silver screen. In fact, if you want to hear more about Gen X era action heroes, we did an entire podcast all about the topic. I'll throw a link up in the corner, you can check that out if you want. Now, this premium edition of Contra actually promises to have the original Arcade Rom in it, and that's fantastic for me. But probably for the first time in the history of ever of these little cabinets, that might be a deterrent. Many people learned to love Contra on their NES or their Famicom. They released Contra on those platforms in 1988, a full year after this was in the arcades. So if perchance you are one of those NES kids that learned to love Contra at home on your console, temper your expectations because this might not be exactly what you were expecting. And one more thing to keep in mind is that this Contra cabinet cost $50. $10 more than that Space Invaders we were talking about before, and double what the traditional My Arcade tabletop units cost, which usually clock in around $20 or $25. So let's keep all of that in mind as we take this Contra to the table for a spin. Well, one thing that My Arcade knows how to do is have attractive box art. Man, this shelf appeal of these machines is fantastic. So obviously Contra on the top here, you got the guys on the front. On the side, we put some information about the history of the game, which is fantastic, kind of showing respect to the game. Flipped around here on the other side, you've got artwork from inside of the game. You got some guys shooting a tank here, and you got the trees kind of filling that up with a power-up and some explosions. And then around back, pretty standard, just kind of like features of the game in multiple languages so you know what you have to expect. Now, this Contra's not nearly as beefy as that the Space Invaders cabinet was, but it's not standard either. For comparison, I brought in the Pac-Man here, which is an established form factor that My Arcade's been using. It's almost exactly the same width, just a little bit thinner on Contra. But as you can see, Contra is substantially deeper, so a new design of the cabinet here has required a bigger box to fit more stuff inside. So speaking of which, let's get inside and see what we got. Now, right off the top here, we have, looks like maybe that same flyer from Space Invaders. Let's see. Yeah, on one side, it lists all their little pocket players, and the front shows all their tabletop cabinets. And then there's these premium ones down here that we know about. The Space Invaders we've already taken a look at. Here's the Contra, and the Street Fighter II still forthcoming. And we got some instructions. We don't, I might need those. Let's hold on to that a second, because also on the top here is this new red cable for the multiplayer. So yeah, I'll put that with these instructions. I just might need that. And fresh out of the box, here's our brand new Contra. The side art is that very kind of bright, kind of pearlescent white almost, with the Contra logo there on the side. And so where's that new real estate? Where's that being spent? Well, let's take a tour of what we've got. On the front here, we have more than just that coin door on the front we normally have. We also have a reset button and a good old American quarter coin insert here, just like the Space Invaders. So real ROMs need real coins, right? The controls, however, do not feel upgraded or premium to me. This looks to be the same D-pad with the screw-on, screw-off bat top joystick. Buttons feel kind of mushy, about the same to me. That's surprising, especially after that Space Invaders. Around the back, it's largely what we've come to expect from My Arcade. You have a headphone jack, volume up and down buttons here. Takes 4 AA batteries, not included. We'll put those in a second. You can power with 5-volt micro USB, and a brand new port here. Here's that co-op versus plug that you can actually play together with a buddy who has another one of these cabinets, cooperatively or competitively. Taking a real quick peek at that co-op versus link cable that's included. You just got a little label on it here that says co-op versus, to be used only with playing 2 devices in co-op versus mode and store in a safe place. Now in the hand, this does not feel substantially different from the previous My Arcade cabinet. So let's go back to our old standby Pac-Man as a comparison. Now lined up side by side here, you can see that the Contra is just a bit taller, mostly in those little wings on the sides of the cabinet. And you look on the side, you can see the control deck of Contra protrudes just a bit further to give you some more real estate. Yeah, so the bat top joystick is clearly identical, but I will say the Contra D-pad feels a bit more rigid, so it isn't exactly the same hardware. It does feel a little stiffer, a little more bounce back to it, so I'll give them credit for a different controller, if not a premium controller like we saw in that Space Invaders. All right, enough of that. We know what's on the outside. Let's get the fake Contra sticker off, put some batteries in, and find out what we got going on the inside. Let's hit that coin door and get started. All right, first things first, we got a nice lighted marquee up here. My Arcade splash screen. Huh, okay. Oh, okay, so for that co-op versus, this is how you're going to select, I'm single player, or I'm linked up as player 1 or 2. Alright, that's a nice way to handle that. I was curious how that was going to work out. Okay, I'm going to hit start. Oh, instructions. Be sure to insert a coin button to add credits for those that don't know. Oh, and there's our game. Look at that, Konami, 1987. Oh, you beautiful Contra music. Oh, nice. Alright, let's put in a coin. Oh, yeah, and start. Here we go. Ah, jump. Don't fall. There we go. Yeah! I don't know what you want to say about Contra. This is Contra. Wow, okay. Unlike the previous premium edition, the speaker on this is really good. I don't even think I have it full blast. I wasn't sure I needed a $50 version of Contra, but it's winning me over. I mean, if you know your Contra, you know this is the original arcade game. I mean, there's nothing that I have to say about the graphics. They're right, because it's authentic as far as I can tell. The sound is good, the speaker is serviceable, much better than the previous one. Come on, shoot the bombs. And I gotta give it up with the controls. I think I kind of dissed on the controls when I first opened the box, but that's fine. Now, yes, you absolutely... There's the fact that you're holding on to this little box instead of holding a controller in your hand or standing in a cabinet, but considering that's what you have to work with, this is about as good as you could hope for. Now, if you play for any amount of time, if you're not familiar with the arcade version, you will find that you cannot continue after a while. And that's by design. That's how it's supposed to be. They did not let you just continue indefinitely. They wanted you to start over and pump quarters into it fresh again. And that's just how Contra is. And, and it gets brutal in a very short amount of time. And now I can't continue. That's the way it's supposed to be. This is an Arcade Rom of Contra. Thank you, My Arcade. You have done a pretty damn good job here. Okay, well that's something to process. I've got to tell you that the Contra kind of both fell short and exceeded my expectations in a couple of different areas. Let's start with the cabinet itself. This is that premium edition cabinet. And so what is it that makes it premium? Is just having an arcade ROM enough to be premium? Well, I would argue no. They should all have been arcade ROMs all along, but okay, maybe. What about controls? Where was that steel shaft joystick and the upgraded premium buttons we saw in the Space Invaders? I mean, that absolutely should have been here, especially with a game as frenetic as Contra. So at its core, this is just kind of a slightly deeper version of the traditional cabinet. Maybe it's that co-op versus thing that makes it premium. Well, okay, Space Invaders didn't have that, but I won't hold that against Contra. But let's think about that. Now, that co-op versus, actually, I love the way it was implemented. I like that when you power on the device, it immediately prompts you to how you want to connect. Are you one player, two player? If you're two player, you player one or two. All that is great. They provide the cable for you, so you don't have to go hunting down a cable. That's cool. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's the same mechanism and cable that's going to be used for that Street Fighter II cabinet that's coming out, hopefully, later in the year. So the co-op and versus is great, but where that breaks down is at that price point. So $50 to play Contra. Okay, yeah, it's double what I was paying for the other games, but I'm not so sure it's worth double. And if you want to play two player, you're gonna pay $100. Two cabinets, run the cable between it. This is basically a two-player game of Contra that would have cost you 50 cents in the arcade, is gonna cost you $100 to play on your table. Now granted, unlimited plays are available, so okay, there's something to be said there, but you've got to be a real fanatic about Contra to want to plunk $100 down, because when the device costs $100, you're getting perilously close to competitors that have better offerings, like your Replicate and your Numbskull and things like that, that to deliver a similar experience with that accurate ROM, but they offer a genuine cabinet replica as well. So you should really think twice about whether or not this unit is for you, especially if you're thinking of getting two of them just to play co-op. Now, before you think I'm just gonna dog on this Contra unit, I'm not. I'm really just laying out all the things that I think are a challenge in the current environment, the current offerings that are out there to a unit like this that costs $50. But in reality, I was actually impressed with what was delivered here. Part of it, I'm sure, is the fact that it is the original ROM. That's what I've been asking for all along when look at the wall of these back here. Not a one of them, by the way, original Arcade Rom. What I'm holding in my hand is genuine experience, great sound, controls, though not the premium ones that I would expect. Actually, they feel a little upgraded from what you're used to. It's ultimately, though, just gonna come down to how deep are your pockets and how much do you love the arcade version of Contra. For me, I really enjoyed it. In fact, I'm going to award this Contra Premium Edition from My Arcade 3 3/4 tokens out of 5. Just shy of 4 for all those reasons I was talking about. There are some challenges that this faces. It's a little less premium in its hardware than I'd expected. So all in all, I would say this Contra unit is a respectable, though not remarkable follow-up in My Arcade's Premium Edition line. I can't wait to see what is coming next. We know that Street Fighter II is on the way. I'm excited for that. Hey, I really hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, you made it to the end. If you liked this video, the best way to say thanks is to watch one more. Here are a couple suggestions that you just might enjoy. And if you love our content, maybe consider becoming a Patreon supporter by following the link on screen.
Unacceptable for grown-ups. Your dinner cannot just be French fries.